can tell them what it meant.
You're in charge. I don't know what you're going to tell them. This is Senator Sarah Eckhardt, District 14, Texas Senate. You have been in office for 3 years, but you've already had to run for election twice, and you're going to do it again this year, right?
Yes.
So 2020, 2022, and 2024, even though the Senate terms are 4 years long.
Yes.
And I find that really fascinating. But anyway, so you're officially now my senator because my district was redrawn during the district redrawing event, which was a bunch of packing.
Yes.
So you actually represent, as I understand it, almost all of the population of Travis County, right?
Yes, I do.
And then also just the whole Austin metro area. You got your law degree from UT?
I did.
And then you became a county attorney. You did that for 7 years. And then after that, you went on to serve in the Travis County
Commissioner's Court. I was on the Commissioner's Court for 8 years, and then I was county judge for 5 years.
County judge for 5 years. And then when Kirk Watson announced he was leaving the Senate seat, you grabbed.
I did.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is that a good intro?
Yeah, it's a great intro.
Is there a story with a pink hat?
There is a story with a pink hat.
2017, and then you got in really big trouble in 2020.
I will tell that story too if you want me to.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hello y'all. I've kind of already talked to y'all some. Gosh, this sounds so loud. Is it all right with y'all if I sit and then we just have a conversation? And if you want to move in, that sounds great. So, okay, a little bit about my origin story. I'm from Texas. My whole family is from Austin, but I was the last one of 6, and I was born in Houston. I was not always in politics. My family is super political. My dad was a U.S. congressman and also a House member in the Texas House as well. But I didn't want to go into the family business. Actually, none of the kids wanted to go into the family business. It's super hard. So not a single one of us 6 was interested in politics. So when I was 17, I moved to New York, and I was in a theater company in New York until I was 30. I didn't come back to Texas until I decided that theater was so freaking political, I might as well just go for it. And when I told my father I was going to come back and go to school and get a law degree and a public policy master's degree, he said, "I'm so happy. The perfect academic background for a politician is theater and law." So I still didn't think that's where I was going. I thought that I would be a trial attorney. And so I was a trial attorney for 8 years before I decided to run for my first office. So at this point, I have run, years. I've run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm in my 6th election right now. So I've run 6 times. I was the first woman Travis County judge. Believe it or not, we'd never had a woman Travis County judge. That's the top executive position. It's not really a judicial position. And while I was there, Donald Trump got elected, and my daughter said that all she wanted for her 13th birthday was to go to the Women's March. So we went up to the Women's March, and when I came back that Tuesday to preside over the Commissioner's Court, I wore my pink hat. And someone brought a complaint against me with the Ethics Commission, saying that it was improper for a judge to wear a political hat while presiding. Then they also complained of a bad joke I made about Governor Abbott at a Texas Tribune panel. I was asked why Greg Abbott hates trees so much. And I repeated a joke that had been around for some time about why he hated trees. And then I immediately felt bad, and I called his office and apologized. But nevertheless, I had an ethics complaint against me for both things. And I fought the ethics complaint on First Amendment grounds and appealed it to a 3-judge panel, all of whom were extremely conservative Republicans. And they found in my favor and published an opinion saying it was completely within my First Amendment rights to wear the hat and to make the joke, however distasteful. And so the courts still work, y'all. Let's hope it stays that way. So y'all have given me a really good list of things that y'all are interested in. Does anybody want to add to it? I can rattle it off for those of you who came a little late. Bodily autonomy, immigration, book bans, DEI, global warming, guns, LGBTQIA, trans medication, public education, Robin Hood funding mechanisms, housing and affordability, homelessness, federal and state relations, state and local relations, regulations of medications. Anything else y'all want to add to the list? Yeah.
Academic freedom.
Academic freedom. Academic freedom and First Amendment. Anything else? How about corruption?
Yes.
Ah, I got a big yes over here. Okay. All right, we also talked a little bit about what we thought government exists for. I got a number of responses that ranged around with, regulating our behavior, providing order, and a sense of order and expectation, funding programs to assist the needy, making sure we have a good economic climate for private sector to thrive, making sure we have a good climate of opportunity for people to thrive. Anything else y'all want to add to why government exists? Yeah.
Would infrastructure be in there?
Infrastructure, providing the infrastructure that would be far too expensive for one private actor to build, but if we can spread out the cost burden over a large group, that's a much more efficient way to go. Anything else? Any other reasons you think government exists? Well, I agree with all of those. And I have encapsulated all of those ideas down into one simple phrase that I keep saying to myself over and over again. And I'm trying to use it as a litmus test as I'm looking at the policies that are being proposed or that I propose in the Texas Senate. And the way I think of it is government in a democracy. Now, it's different in other forms of government. We can talk about that, but we'd be here all night. But in a democracy, government exists to help us help each other. So when we are regulating activities, we're helping, the government is helping us help each other be held accountable. When the government creates criminal codes, it's helping us help each other maintain a standard of behavior, whether it's civil or criminal, really. When the government funds a program for the neediest among us, it's helping us help each other in a way that is more efficient than if we were just relying on the thoughts and prayers of our neighbors. And when the government builds a large piece of infrastructure, it's helping us help each other move people, goods, ideas, resources, so that we can all share them, right? So I like to think of government as helping us help each other. And I think that many in the conservative movement, and I am not a conservative, I'll tell you up front, I'm a liberal Democrat. But in some respects, I am conservative because I think government, in its programs to help us help each other, that those programs should be effective, efficient, fair, and minimally intrusive. Now, sometimes you can get a little more effectiveness that's not as efficient. Or you can get something that's effective and efficient, but it's fair only for a subset and not for the others. Or you can have something that's wildly effective, efficient, and fair, but is maximally intrusive. So I'm always looking for a balance between those four in order to help us help each other. And I can give you some examples of that. It would be incredibly effective and efficient and fair in some respects if it was mandatory that we all get vaccinated for COVID. That would be super effective, efficient, and fair, because it would be, it's an effective drug. It's efficient because also you would have far less people getting sick and the dollar figure from COVID would have been much lower. It's fair because everyone would have to do it, and also it would reduce the infection rate among others, so that's fair. But it would be maximally intrusive. So it fails that one test. And that test is an important one with regard to individual liberty. But then we also could have things that are like gun regulation or the lack thereof. It is neither effective nor efficient to have massive holes in our background check system. It renders criminal background checks for gun purchasing incredibly ineffective. It also creates huge inefficiencies inside our policing in trying to determine whether an individual who is openly armed is a threat or not. And it is, while it is not at all intrusive on the individual who's bearing arms, it is very intrusive on the individuals who feel threatened by by this person who's walking around across the street at ACC with an AR-15 strapped on his or her back, right? So these are some examples of that dynamic between effective, efficient, fair, and minimally intrusive. Who are you intruding upon by regulating or failing to regulate? So I'm going to put this out there. State government, not all in state government, there is a trend, a deeply troubling trend from my perspective in state government, toward what I will honestly call Christian nationalism, which is not Christian, but that's how they describe themselves. Christian nationalism the idea of Christian nationalism has taken over a certain faction of the Republican Party specifically, but I also want to be fair in my judgment that some tropes of Christian nationalism have shown up all across the political spectrum, including among liberal Democrats. The Christian nationalist movement seeks to identify a specific group and make a nation just for that specific group. The term Christian is a dog whistle for a specific group, an identity. And therefore, there's nothing Christian about it. But any kind of nationalist exclusivity that gains political power with the intention of holding it close and denying it to others is fundamentally undemocratic in the sense of democracy. And the only way an authoritarian regime like that can take hold in democracy is if it divides people, frightens people, and turns them against one another, and undermines their faith in participating in democracy. Authoritarian regimes cannot take hold in a democracy where people participate. That is the antidote to authoritarianism. It's the reason why democracy was created, actually. So think about it. Democracy came up at a time where most cultures believed that they needed a God-anointed individual to tell them what to do. And it was in reaction to this notion of a God-anointed individual that democracy was born. A belief that we could govern ourselves collectively, that we could help each other, and that was actually a better form of government than relying on an authoritarian who would simply give us our assignments. So, can you help me think of something that the state government has done in the last couple of sessions that helps us help each other? Anything? I'm having a hard time thinking of one too. I mean, if the point of government is to help us help each other, what has the state legislature done that any of us can recall? Medications with regard to marijuana? Did you mention something about that? Okay, there was one that I can think of. We, I'm in the state legislature, I should say we made it legal for the Veterans Administration inside the state of Texas to experiment with psilocybin in the treatment of lasting trauma. So that's something good. Any other ideas of how the state legislature did something grand to help us help each other?
Yeah. There's something about building a train, but like it's been very like.
Oh, the building the train is entirely a local initiative. That is the city of Austin.
Okay.
But let's throw that out there. So the city of Austin is trying to build a train. That's something that's helping us help each other. City of Austin and Travis County, along with the feds, are pouring a tremendous amount of money into affordable housing. That's helping us help each other. There are lots and lots of local efforts on criminal justice reform. That certainly is helping us help each other. City of Austin and Austin Water and Austin Energy are both way, way out on the cutting edge with regard to green energy and also water reuse. And that's helping us help each other. None of those are state programs. In fact, the state is trying to keep local governments from initiating such programs through something they call they don't call it that, I call it the Death Star legislation, that would prevent local governments from doing anything that the state doesn't specifically give them the permission to do. And that passed in the last legislative session. I am struggling to find where it is state government and the leadership of state government is helping us help each other. There was a property tax break that they passed last legislative session, we passed last legislative session. And I voted for it because it is slightly better than what we currently have. It was a slightly better distribution of tax burden, and it will last for 2 years and then it will be gone. So I voted for it. They crowed about it like it was the biggest thing, the best thing since sliced bread. This is not a grand program to help us help each other. There was a water bill, that was good, passed $1 billion toward water infrastructure. The Texas Water Development Board says the price tag for solving our water problems is about $73 billion. And even though we had a $36 billion surplus, we did not raise teacher salaries. We did not invest in public education. We did not increase the reimbursement rate for home health care workers. We did not fix the grid, despite what they say. We did not solve the problem in the foster care system. But we did make sure that trans athletes can't play at the collegiate level. Are there any trans athletes playing at the collegiate level in the state of Texas? Not a single one. So I want to draw a thread here between, because oftentimes I get overwhelmed with all these really heinous policies that y'all know the bad policies, but none of y'all can name any good ones. And I don't blame you. I'm having a hard time naming good ones. But going after a woman's right to decide whether, when, and with whom to have children is a way to divide us and to make us afraid of one another. Doctors are afraid to provide services to women. We are afraid to help one another out of fear of being harassed by the Attorney General's office and possibly criminally convicted. Immigration. The words that are being used are invasion. That's a completely inappropriate word. There is no invasion going on. There is no armed group that is invading our country. These are people who are looking for opportunity. And to the extent that they are fleeing crime in Mexico or any other country south of us, 70% of the guns seized in Mexico in criminal activity come from the United States. 70%. And most of them come from Texas. So this is a way to divide us and make us afraid of one another. Also making guns so ubiquitous, so easy to get, is also making us afraid of one another. How many of y'all have had the experience of walking down Congress Avenue or really anywhere in the city of Austin and seeing someone openly carrying a weapon? And were you afraid? Did it make you afraid? Or were you just like, it's just an accessory to his or her wardrobe? How did it make you feel?
There was this one time I was just at a party and a guy pulled like brass knuckles on me and started playing around with it. It's like I was near him, but I don't like when someone just plays with their weapon they just have next to me. It makes me feel like at any moment it can slip out of their hand and stab me on accident.
And didn't it feel, it was like low-key threatening?
Yeah, it's like I'm just there trying to mind my own business. I don't need to be near you. And the fact that we're within this close vicinity and I could see weapons on him because it wasn't just knuckles, it was just like he even had a pistol. It's like, what are you arming yourself for? Right.
It's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're going to arm yourself that way, you intend to use it at some point, right? So again, this is about making us afraid of one another. Same thing with book bans and DEI. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Who ever thought those three words were bad? I mean, I had no idea that those three words, or ESG, environmental, social, and governmental investment, that also is now outlawed in the state of Texas. That didn't get as much press as DEI. But two acronyms, DEI and ESG, are now outlawed in the state of Texas.
Why do they need to be banned?
Because it is a way to divide us and to make us afraid of one another. That is the whole point in each one of these policies. To divide and make us afraid, to divide and make us angry and suspicious. Book bans, same thing. It's to take away knowledge from our children on the excuse that we in the state government are protecting you. So the claim is we are protecting our children by removing these books from the bookshelves. We are protecting our college students from being indoctrinated by diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are protecting the family by preventing women from having access to full reproductive health care. We are protecting the unborn by banning abortions. We are protecting the Texas way of life by securing our borders against invasion. The excuse is always protection, but the effect is always to divide us and to make us afraid of one another. This is the only way an authoritarian regime can achieve power. And the only way to defeat an authoritarian regime is to participate and deny them that power. So our best gambit at rolling back this authoritarianism in the state of Texas is for everyone to participate in voting and in running for office. Republicans and Democrats. We need everyone voting and running for office. And you're going to hear this over and over again, and you're going to say, if I skip one election, the world is not going to come to an end. But I'll tell you, democracy will. It will come to an end. Don't skip a single election. Get in the habit of going to every single election. If you don't know what's on the ballot, go ask someone who does that you trust. And that's okay. That's not vote harvesting, even though some of my colleagues would say that's what it is. It's not. Go ask someone you trust. What's going on with this TCAD election on May 6th? Have y'all heard about that? There's a TCAD election. What the hell is TCAD, right? Just go ask somebody. I'm here to tell you, show up on May 6th and vote in the TCAD election for 3 candidates. And this is how I remember it. We have love. Wang, Hannah, and Levine. We have love. It's not going to say Republican and Democrat in that election because it's ostensibly a nonpartisan position. Super important to vote in it, though. And those 3 guys are really good guys. The other ones are some scary individuals who want to get on the CAD board and deny public schools funding and local governments funding. So we have love. Wang, Hannah, and Levine. May 4th? Are you sure? Okay, May 4th. May the 4th be with you. We have love. The reason why I say get in the good habit is, any of y'all ever done any environmental studies and studied entropic decline? Entropic collapse. Entropic collapse is when in a food chain, enough of the species in the food chain die off or decline that the entire chain collapses. That's what's happening politically. Enough people are not voting that we are getting representation that doesn't actually represent us. 80% of Texans, Republican or Democrat, want universal background checks for guns. In a democracy, when 80% of the population wants something, your leaders are supposed to give it to you. But the Texas Senate wouldn't hear a single common sense gun bill last session. So what that indicates is we have political entropic collapse, because they are not at all afraid that 80% of their constituency wants this. They're only afraid of the very small number who vote in their primaries. And that's when you have entropic collapse, when not enough of us are participating. So vote in every election, even the really boring, arcane ones. We need the habit of voting, and we need to spread that all around to all of our friends and all of our family. Republican, Democrat, Libertarian. I do care what your political philosophy is, but I care even more that everyone is voting, because then we truly get the government we deserve. Right now, the government we have is not helping us help each other. It's not at all interested in helping us help each other. It only is interested in doing things that look good but don't do any good at best, and at worst, doing things that divide us and make us afraid. So vote in every election, and I'm sure that someone in this room wants to run for something someday. Anybody? Anybody want to run for something someday? I saw like a maybe. Think about it. And don't be ashamed to admit it if you really do want to. Unfortunately, right now, people believe that anyone who goes into politics is at least incompetent, if not corrupt. Otherwise, why in God's name would they want to do it? But I'll tell you why I want to do it. Do y'all listen? Anybody listen to NPR? A couple of y'all. Good. So the rest of y'all have not heard this story. There was an interview with a shopkeeper in Palestine who was keeping his cafe open in a neighborhood that was normally quite diverse, with a clientele that was normally Jewish, Muslim, international, but nobody was coming because of the war. But he kept his cafe doors open, and the interviewer said, "Why are you doing that?" And he said, "I must keep my doors open to hope." And the interviewer said, "How could you possibly be an optimist under these circumstances?" And he said, "If I'm an optimist my entire life and I find out I was wrong on my deathbed, I will have had one bad day. But if I'm a pessimist and I find out on my deathbed I was wrong, I will have wasted my life." So that's why I do the work that I do. It's not because I'm incompetent, at least incompetent, if not corrupt. It's because I believe that we must keep the door open for a government that will help us help each other. And I must believe that most of my colleagues, Republican or Democrat, want to do that too. But they have been divided and they are afraid of one another. So my job is to help them, help me, help you. I could be a fool and I might be absolutely wrong. But at the end of my life in public service, if I find out I was wrong, I will just have one bad day. So think about running. Y'all are young now. It might happen. And if you do decide to run, be proud of it. It's a noble thing to do to help us help each other. It's perhaps the noblest thing we can do in this life. So what questions do y'all have? Yes?
How much change do you think is necessary for Texas?
Well, if if any of y'all ever want to do any statistical research on this, there's something called the Texas Politics Project at the University of Texas. It's a statistical surveying entity, and it doesn't work for any politicians. It's purely academic, so to academic freedom. The Texas Politics Project runs a polling system that's constantly polling Texas residents on various issues. And according to the Texas Politics Project, most people who live in Texas today, by a very slight majority, identify as Democrats. So how is it that we're getting the result that we're getting? It's the lack of participation at the polls. People think their vote doesn't matter, but clearly it does. By failing to show up at the polls, we have an extreme authoritarian Christian nationalist leadership in the Texas legislature. So extreme that it is now beginning to punish fellow Republicans. So we have a number of Republican legislators who have left or been defeated by the most extreme in their own party. Another indication of political entropic collapse. So I don't think actually, I think if Democrats or any opposing party, but let's say Democrats because we have a two-party system. If there is one statewide office that is won by the opposing party, I think that the myth of this indomitable force will come crumbling down. It just takes one, and then a whole bunch of people will rush in to run. So I do predict that when one domino falls, then you will see a reshuffling of the deck and a resurgence of a two-party system that's far more balanced. You will see both a resurgence among the Democrats, but you'll also see a resurgence among the more reasonable Republicans who will shake off their fear and actually stand up on their hind legs and show some independence. One example of that is vouchers. Vouchers is not popular among Republican legislators. It's not popular in rural Texas. The governor continues to push it because he's trying to prove his Christian nationalist credentials at the national level. It's not because his constituency wants it. There were a number of Republican House members and a couple of Republican Senate members who stood firm and voted their conscience on vouchers, denying the governor the votes he needed to pass the voucher bill last session. And that shows that there still is an independence, a fierceness among Republicans who feel that they are being ostracized by an increasingly authoritarian wing of their own party. Yes, ma'am.
In your terms, have you seen an increase of building sustainability in the state of Texas?
Absolutely not. She asked, have you seen an increase in building sustainability policies in the state of Texas? Actually, I've seen exactly the opposite. In response to the grid collapse in Winter Storm Uri, the bill that was pushed through to solve the problem was a bill to subsidize the continuation of carbon-based, the dirtiest of the carbon-based fuels in what they call dispatchable energy. It is dispatchable, and that is good, and I'm happy for that. But there are other types of dispatchable besides carbon-based, and they made the subsidy exclusively available to carbon-based, which would be oil and gas and coal. I had a bill that was actually rather popular from a bipartisan standpoint that ultimately failed. I pressed it 2 legislative sessions in a row, and I'll press it again. Texas was the very first state to have energy efficiency goals. Like LEED? Like LEED.
Yeah.
And we instituted those energy efficiency goals back in the 1980s. When they were passed, they were rather low. You could pretty much stumble over that goal. And we've blown past that goal enormously. And so my bill was to simply reset goals, reset energy efficiency goals. Because if the energy companies achieve these energy efficiency goals, they get benefits. Right now, they're all achieving them because the goals are so damn low. So no, I haven't seen sustainability really take hold in the Texas legislature. But I'm going to keep working on that. We made ESG investment illegal in the state of Texas. ESG is ESG capital funded solar and wind power. Now that ESG capital can no longer participate in the Texas market, that is problematic for the renewable energy market as well as the municipal bond market, but that's probably too far in the weeds for our conversation today. It's very much hurting the municipal bond market. What other questions do y'all have? Yes, sir? You had a hand up, didn't you? No? Oh.
Have you had experience of seeing gerrymandering happen?
So here's something that's completely counterintuitive. He asked about gerrymandering. Anybody into game theory here? Game theory is fascinating. And of course, how you set the game up, the way you set the rules up, can define how people win and who wins. And so gerrymandering, which has been going on for a really long time but has gotten particularly expert, has created a circumstance in Texas where even though a slight majority of Texans identify Democrat, most of the state House positions and state Senate positions are drawn specifically for a Republican to win them. And a Democrat can't win them. The way they do it, and what visually can I use? If that bank of windows was a city, a major municipality, which is mostly Democratic, like Houston, mostly Democrats, what they will do is they'll draw, in order to make the population necessary for a Senate district, you have to have about 800,000 people, 900,000 people in a Senate district. So they've got to draw, let's say, 5 Senate districts out of the city of Houston. So they've got this big bank of windows. So there have to be 5 senators with a piece of Houston. So they could draw it so that there are 4 Democratic senators and 2 Republican senators with, this set of panes of windows and that set of pane of windows, and then out to the suburbs. But they're not going to do that because then there'd be too many Democrats. So what they do is they take pieces of the city. I don't want to lose that because it's a cool sticker and I'm putting it on the back of my computer. They take a piece of the city and they blow it way out into the rural areas. And then they take that piece of the city and blow it way out to the rural area. And then they take that piece of the city and blow it way out to the rural area, and this one and blow it way out to the rural area, and they get 4 Republicans and a couple of Democrats in the middle. So it's super, super hard for a Democrat to win any of those other 4 seats that they've blown way out into the rural areas. Counterintuitively, they can't gerrymander statewide. You can't gerrymander a statewide race because by definition it's statewide. So it's actually easier for the minority party to take a statewide office than it is for the minority party to flip a House seat or a Senate seat. That's why we've got to concentrate on statewide offices. One statewide office flips to the minority party, and you will see a reshuffling of the deck and a much better balance between Republican and Democrat, resulting in a more representative state government. But we've got to flip a statewide seat. So yeah, gerrymandering's terrible, and it happens every 10 years. So I have to stay in the legislature at least until 2031 so that I can help with gerrymandering, because it happens the year after the census. Other questions? This has been so much fun, y'all. If you want to know any more about this stuff, or if you've got assignments for me, some cool thing that y'all are working on that you want me to know about, come to one of my coffee jolts. They are the 3rd Thursday of the month at some coffee house somewhere in Travis County. I move it around. I don't go to national chains, so you're not going to find me at a Starbucks. I did go to a Starbucks once up in Pflugerville, but that's because it was the only coffee shop they had at the time. But now Pflugerville has all kinds of cool places. But yeah, generally, if you want to come by, it would be great to have you, because I mostly have older folks who want to complain about traffic. So I'd really like to have y'all there. That's not true. I have some amazing folks who show up at these coffee jolts. So I get my best ideas from coffee jolts. So come on by. And we also do community happy hours, but they're happening like once every quarter, right? So we've got a community happy hour in April.
The
The 23rd. Do we know where we're going to do it? Lazarus? So I think we're going to do it, the community happy hour at Lazarus. We just had a coffee jolt at Mozart, so I don't know where the next one is. But yeah, just check me out on social media. We put those up. So come on by. Come on by. This has been super fun. I appreciate it, y'all.